Composite or plastic? Which is the better kayak? A viewer asked me this recently, and after 20 years of paddling both, I have thoughts. And I think the question, which is better, is a natural place to start, but it doesn't get us to where we need to be. There's a more important question, in fact, several more important questions to ask, and they change the entire conversation. Instead of giving you a direct answer, which honestly really isn't my style on this channel anyway, I'm going to give you something more useful, how to actually think about choosing between these two types of boat construction. By the end, I think you might be thinking about this differently too. Right off the start, friends, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bit biased. And if you've been following the channel, you've seen me almost exclusively in my composite boats. There's, I think, one episode where I'm in a plastic boat. So yeah, I'm a composite guy. So let me tell you why. 20 years ago when I started paddling, I bought a plastic perception boat. We got a great deal on it. It was available, it's what I could afford, got the boat, had an amazing time with it. But my friend who I was paddling with a lot had an old beat up NDK Romney in the beautiful racing green with the yellow stripes. But friends, it was like a Frankenstein boat. There were gel coat patches on it. There were fiberglass patches on it. I'm sure there's probably some duct tape, but even with all of that, I thought it was the most beautiful boat I had ever seen. The lines, the shapes, the colors, the sleekness. So from that point, I've always, for some reason, had an emotional connection to composite boats. Okay, so with that out of the way, it doesn't really affect my viewpoint here of what I'm going to share, but I did want to name it to not let it say like, well, how come we haven't seen Steve sea kayak in a lot of plastic boats? Okay, before I go really any further, I just want to take a step back and not assume you all are fully aware of what these terms are, just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So composite boats are fiberglass or carbon or Kevlar boats that those layers are epoxied together, and then there's a gel coat or protective layer on the outside of the boat. Plastic boats are rotomolded boats or foam core boats with a plastic lining on either side. They're also, wooden boats, I realize. Go check out my friend Nick's channel and work over at Guillemot Kayaks. And, folding kayaks and inflatable kayaks. And those are all things that I have zero experience with, honestly, friends. So today I'm focusing on this idea of a composite boat or a plastic boat. The first consideration I want to loop into is thinking about the types of paddling that you want to do. If you want to eventually turn into a rock garden expert someday, then that activity favors plastic. Plastic flexes under impact. That's one of its biggest selling points. So that when you jam it up against a rock wall or get too close to a ledge and feel that, hit that ledge on the bottom of your boat, the boat's going to flex and it's not going to break or crack in some of the ways that fiberglass would. I'll talk a little bit more about that. There's an example of a time in Baja when a friend was in a feature and got stuck, and he ejected out of the boat, but the boat got folded, not fully in half, but got a pretty good dent in it. Someone brought it to the shore, popped that dent back out in the middle of the kayak, and we kept on with our day. If that's a composite boat, that probably would have ended a whole lot differently. So that's one of the benefits of thinking of how rough are you going to be potentially with your kayak, with the type of kayaking that you want to do. I'll also add, there's something that feels amazing. You settle in your nervous system when you're in a plastic boat and you're around rocks, or when you're going over some ledges that aren't very deep and you're not too worried about taking a chunk out of the bottom of your boat. There is something calming about that experience of being in a plastic boat. Not to say plastic can't get damaged, which we'll chat about, but there's something that makes you a little bit more calmer, as well as I think a little bit more competent around the rocks and the sharp bits. Now, in touring, I think composite really earns its spot here, friends. They're more rigid, they hold their shape, and because they hold their shape better, they're fractionally more efficient on the water. There's such a confident feeling when you're punching through chop or a wave in a composite boat and everything just feels so stable. Where in a plastic boat, you might feel a little bit of that wiggle. Or when you're on an edge, that edge is just a little bit, in my opinion, sharper than maybe they can make it in a composite boat. And I think that grip has a different feeling on the water. Now that confidence of a composite boat comes at a cost, and that's where I want to go next, is what these boats actually cost. What you might spend can be a huge factor in making a distinction between these two, composite and plastic. And this is where plastic wins. Plastic, for the most part, is less expensive than a composite boat. Composite boats are handmade. It takes a long time to make them. The materials aren't very cheap. Plastic boats can be manufactured with a mold. They can be a little bit faster to build. The materials are a little less expensive. So this is where plastic's biggest selling point might be, and why I think a lot of people start with plastic boats. I don't want to move off of this without talking about used boats. I own 4 kayaks between Wendy and I, and one of them, and it happens to be Wendy's, is plastic. All of the other boats, the composite boats, are all used boats. These boats hold their value extremely well. I mean, all kayaks do, but composite kayaks in particular. And it's a great way to not have to spend $6,000 or $7,000 on a boat and get the features you're looking for. So I want to bring that up here, that the used boat market is something absolutely worth exploring. And then you can use this framework to decide, is that boat right for me? So what are you actually getting for that money? What are some of the trade-offs? We've talked a little bit about them, but let's talk a little bit how these boats perform a little differently on the water. I did touch on composite hull shape and how that hull integrity holds up a little bit better. Plastic kayaks can develop dips and warps over time from heat or incorrect storage or UV. I've paddled boats that have had sort of an oil can shape on the bottom, meant for going over rocks. That's what we were doing with them, but I was just questioning how efficient they were for me on the water. So I think that composite gives you a little bit more leeway there, a little bit more of a benefit in performance. Your hull's going to track and stay predictable really years down the road. Remember, used boats, years down the road, that boat that you buy used or new for a crazy amount of money is the boat you keep paddling, where the shape of that plastic boat might shift and adjust over time based off of how you store it and what you do in it. I think composite allows for more sharper defined chines. And I mentioned this a little bit of kind of feeling an edge. I feel like you get like immediate feedback when you're on an edge. And maybe it's just all in my head, but I just get the sense that the sharper lines give me more leeway and more responsiveness. Plastic, those transitions seem to be a little softer and a little less precise. And yeah, it's a subjective experience that I might be feeling here, and maybe you felt it too. And if you have felt it, put it in the comments. I'd love to know it's not just in my mind. But I just feel like the tolerances on a composite boat are just a little tighter, if that helps you understand. Okay, weight. Composite has a wider range of weight options, and that range gets a whole lot lighter than maybe some plastic boats. It can get a lot heavier too. Now here's the thing, and this may be one of the more controversial things I say here. The weight difference matters off the water more than on the water. You notice the weight difference when you're putting your boat on or off your car, you're carrying it around. When you're on the water, I don't think you notice the weight difference for the price you spend. So for most paddlers, I think you're buying convenience, which for some people is the main decision point. I get it. Not on the water performance. So maybe you've chosen that composite's the way to go for you, or that weight savings is absolutely vital, and maybe you've spent $7,000 on an ultralight construction, and getting your boat off your car is a breeze, and it's super light because that thing weighs like 38 pounds. But if you're someone who thinks like, okay, I've got my boat off my car, but now where do I put my boat? There's no soft patches of grass here. Do I get like a yoga mat out and put it on there? If this is a decision in your head, if it's not completely comfortable for you to put that beautiful $7,000 new shiny hull onto something that might scratch it. This next decision might be something that's really important to you. And again, I think there's some other, maybe not controversial aspects here, but things that I think people don't view correctly with composite boats. So I want to talk about the maintenance mindset and what I think of as the scratch myth to composite boats, right? So these composite boats have a sacrificial layer, and this is the controversial thing potentially. It's gel coat. It's a material that's put on the outside of the boat, wet and dries and hardens and protects the structural material of the carbon fiber or the fiberglass. And it is repairable. I've shown you on this channel how I am not afraid to get chunks or scratches or drag my fiberglass boat over things because I am prepared to either repair it or, if I had to, have someone else repair it. But composite might ask you to either become a gel coat person or get to know a gel coat person. It's not a ton of work. Everything you need to learn you can find on the internet, but it might not be what you want to do when you go paddle or when you take care of your boat. If you want your boat to come out of the factory and be completely functional for 10 or 15 years and not get any scratches, if that's going to get some, if that's going to make you anxious, then you might want to look at plastic. It's not that it doesn't scratch again, but it's a bit more forgiving. And you can plastic weld boats. There's a technique of melting plastic to fix things, but it's hard to deal with structural damage. So there are some things you can repair in a plastic boat, but the question to ask is, do you want to maintain your boat or just use your boat? Are scratches to the gel coat going to send you into some psychological spiral? And if so, maybe plastic might be the way to go for you. The real question was never composite versus plastic. It was what matches how I paddle, what I value, and what gets me out on the water. You can see this is not a one-size-fits-all question. And I think that's what makes each one of us love our boat so much. It fits exactly what we need, and it's our tool, it's our boat. If you don't have a boat yet, or you're waiting for the perfect boat, or you're thinking about buying a second boat, there's something that sailors talk about. The best boat is the one you can afford that gets you out there now. I have friends with those $7,000 boats, and I have friends with $700 plastic used boats. Both are having just as much fun on the water. And that's the point, isn't it? How do you think about this difference? I'd love for you to share it in the comments if you take a direct approach or if it's a more nuanced approach like I do. I'd love to also hear your thoughts and experience with different compositions of boats. I love learning from all of you and hearing your experiences. All right, friends. Well, as always, I hope you enjoy your adventures, whatever they are. And until next time, safe paddling. Bye for now.
I am captivated.